The Arctic is heating up, and not because of climate change. Russia and the US are facing off over control of the Arctic. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by CuriosityStream. It's great for people like you who love watching videos and learning cool stuff. CuriosityStream has a huge selection of documentaries and non-fiction TV shows. I'll tell you more at the end of the episode. So, the US and Russia have entered another Cold War. A very cold war in the Arctic. Moscow has reactivated dozens of Soviet-era military bases in the region, and they're using them to test some insane weapons, including one that's been called Russia's Apocalypse Torpedo, because it can unleash radioactive tsunamis. Yes, radioactive tsunamis. That's still better than Russia's previous Apocalypse Torpedo, which unleashed the song Radioactive by Imagine Dragons. It was too destructive even for Russia. But according to the German Institute for International and Security Affairs, the Arctic is integral to Russia's overall confrontation with the West. Why is the Arctic so important to Russia? It's the huge economic opportunity the Arctic provides. Economic opportunity that Moscow protects with its military.
Russia has a very ambitious program for economic development in the region, development of energy resources, development of the polar shipping routes. And also this economic activity drives a number of new missions and activities for the Russian armed forces in the region.
According to the Norwegian Institute of Defense Studies, the United States doesn't have enough military power to tip the balance against Russia in the region for the time being. Which means Russia is trying to gain control of the Northern Sea Route. That's this shipping route that runs from Norway to Alaska. This map is looking down with the North Pole as the center. It used to be too icy to sail through, but thanks to shrinking polar ice caps, new shipping opportunities are opening up. Literally. Shipping through the Arctic is way faster than shipping from East Asia to Europe through the Suez Canal. Not only is it faster, it helps Russia reduce its reliance on Europe as a critical energy market and on Ukraine. So how is Russia trying to control the Arctic? I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. The Arctic is the latest battleground between the US and Russia. So how is Russia trying to gain control? There are two main ways: by using international institutions and its military. Last week, top US and Russian officials met in Reykjavik, Iceland. It was on the sidelines of the Arctic Council Summit. Cute logo. The fox's cousin is the Firefox logo. The Arctic Council is made up of the countries that border the Arctic, including the US and Russia, as well as Arctic indigenous peoples and indigenous animals, like the Coca-Cola bears. This was the first face-to-face meeting between US and Russian officials since President Biden took office. Biden will meet Vladimir Putin in Europe next month, which will be a few months after Biden called Putin a killer. Putin said, "I know you are, but what am I?" and challenged him to a debate. That's not a joke. Putin actually said, "I know you are, but what am I?" If it turns out Putin is also made of rubber, I don't know what Biden will be able to do. Whatever he says will bounce off of Putin and hit the US with a radioactive tsunami. Still better than hitting us with Imagine Dragons. After Putin challenged Biden to a debate, Biden said he was too busy. So obviously there's a bit of tension between the US and Russia. But at the Arctic Council meeting, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, America's top diplomat, diffused tensions by greeting his Russian counterpart with an elbow bump. Blinken then wowed him with a gnarly Ollie North. Blinken also said he hoped the US and Russia could work collaboratively on certain issues, like climate change, the Middle East, Iran, and North Korea.
It's our view that if the leaders of Russia and the United States can work together cooperatively, our people, the world, can be a safer and more secure place, and that's what we seek.
Есть понимание необходимости преодолеть нездоровую ситуацию, которая сложилась в отношениях между Москвой и Вашингтоном в предыдущие годы.
Unhealthy situation between the US and Russia? Come on. Now, the Arctic Council is supposed to promote peaceful cooperation, things like sustainable development and environmental protection. But guess what? The chairmanship of the Arctic Council rotates every 2 years. And you know who's in charge now? Russia, until 2023. And so Russia, as the new head of the Arctic Council, wants to set new rules for the Northern Sea Route to say who can or can't go through. The US obviously isn't happy about that, which is why it rallied other members in the Arctic Council to oppose Moscow's plans to set maritime rules in the Northern Sea Route. But as I said earlier, Russia is also using its military to control the Arctic. I'll get to that after the break. Welcome back. Now, are you subscribed to America Uncovered? You should subscribe. So, besides setting new maritime rules in the Arctic, Russia is also trying to bring its military into the mix. Military talks have not been a part of the Arctic Council since 2014. They were suspended over Russia's actions in Ukraine, which is a gentle way to put it. But now that Moscow is in charge of the Arctic Council, it wants to bring back military dialogue, and it wants to put its military in the Arctic. The US is opposed to that, for some reason. I can't imagine why. Russia insists motives are peaceful and economic. And Putin says if anyone disagrees, we'll knock out everyone's teeth, peacefully. You can see why there are growing concerns in Washington and among some NATO allies about a surge in Russian military and commercial activity in the Arctic. To assist with the teeth-kicking, the Russian government has resumed operations at over 50 Soviet-era military bases in the Arctic, including 10 radar stations and 13 air bases. A lot of Russia's nuclear capabilities are concentrated next to the Arctic, particularly here on the Kola Peninsula. Satellite images show a buildup of one of the Russian military bases in the region, and this one shows a new airfield on a remote island. Russia is also amping up military drills in the Arctic. These include tests for anti-aircraft systems, in-flight refueling, and jamming the controls of drones, as well as nuclear-powered submarines. And as I mentioned earlier, torpedoes. One of them is the Poseidon 2M39 torpedo. It's a massive stealth torpedo that's powered by a nuclear reactor. It's designed to sneak past coastal defenses on the seafloor to deliver a warhead that causes radioactive waves, which is why one State Department official described it as a weapon designed to engulf U.S. coastal cities with radioactive tsunamis. Again, better than engulfing U.S. coastal cities with radioactive by Imagine Dragons. I mean, why was the music video about Lou Diamond Phillips running an underground Muppet fighting ring? It makes no sense. Anyway, back to Russia. They're also testing new hypersonic missiles and supersonic cruise missiles. All of Russia's long-range precision strike capabilities are dual capable. That means they're able to carry both conventional and nuclear warheads. According to the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies, intertwining nuclear and conventional capabilities is currently a part of Russian military strategy. It gives Russia more flexibility and options for escalation. Russia can't afford prolonged conflict against sophisticated adversaries like the US. So why not add a mix of nukes? Or at least have the ability to deliver them. And as I mentioned, the US currently doesn't have enough military power in the Arctic to balance Russia. But that doesn't mean the US has done nothing. Under President Trump back in 2018, the US reestablished the Second Fleet. The Second Fleet is responsible for the East Coast and the North Atlantic. It had been deactivated in 2011 as the Navy shifted priorities elsewhere. And remember the whole Trump wants to buy Greenland thing? Well, it was actually about countering Russia in the Arctic. Also China, but that's a different episode. In the final days of the Trump administration, the United States, in a renewed focus on the Arctic, set up a consulate in Greenland and also donated $12 million in aid towards developing the small economy, which helped resolve a conflict over a very important U.S. Arctic air base. The US and Britain also began anti-submarine exercises in the Arctic Circle. US Marines trained in Norway and Finland. And for the first time in history, the US landed 4 B-1 bombers in Norway. The Biden administration has yet to put its fingerprints on US Arctic policy. But the Arctic is rapidly becoming a flashpoint for a new US-Russia Cold War. Of course, from Russia's perspective, it worries about military deployments so close to its borders, especially since 4 of the Arctic Council states are also part of NATO. Russia is suspicious of NATO. NATO is suspicious of Russia. And so you have a lot of military deployments in the Arctic, as you can see from this active Arctic military tracker from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. So it's not just climate change heating up the Arctic. And this episode has been sponsored by CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is a streaming platform with dozens of collections of fascinating TV shows, including award-winning and original programming. For example, The Spying Game, Tales from the Cold War. It's about Allied military liaison missions in East Germany. Very little is known about what they did behind enemy lines, and how they narrowly escaped death to bring back intelligence on Soviet military operations. It's a really cool documentary where they talk to some of the spies who survived. With CuriosityStream, you can watch that and thousands of other streamable documentaries and nonfiction shows on topics like history, nature, science, food, technology, and travel. So click the link below and use the code UNCOVERED to get our special deal. Just $14.99 for the entire year. You can watch CuriosityStream from your phone, tablet, or computer anywhere, anytime. So click the link below and check it out. I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.